And now it's time for Mike's Spotlight on Industry Leaders.
Hey guys, welcome back for another exciting episode with JL Carpenter, attorney at law. She's one of the top criminal defense attorneys here in Houston. Today, we're going to be talking about assault charges and some of the great representation that she provided to these clients and these ridiculous circumstances. I mean, you guys are going to be shocked about this, but I'm going to tell you, it should put you on notice how ridiculous some of these criminal charges are. And this goes to our continuing effort to help bring this stuff to light, so that in case, bad things happen to good people all the time, and you're gonna understand why after we get through talking about this stuff. These assault charges are becoming more prevalent, and you need to make sure that you're prepared if you get accused of something like this, and this first story is gonna shine a light on it. So the first thing we're gonna be talking about today is a Class C assault charge. So you've got a restaurant owner that's behind the bar in its tight quarters. And the bartender, the female good-looking bartender, was bending over to put some things in storage. And he had his hand over her back, not touching, just over her back in case she popped up. And the night goes on. He's not aware of anything. She didn't say anything. And then they're closing the restaurant. He left. He's just letting them close. He's no longer there. The bartender runs into his private office, pulls video, or calls the police, brings them in his office, and shows them the video and makes an assault charge on him. So, JL, how you doing?
Hey, Mike. How are you?
This is very aggravating.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm telling you, this is the kind of stuff that really pisses me off.
Well, and this is a really good guy, a successful businessman. He's well known in our community. And when the cops called him back to come to the restaurant, and he did, ultimately they cuffed him and arrested him in front of all of his customers.
Oh my God. This is, I mean, there ought to be some repercussions for making these false claims.
Well, this is going to make you even happier. After this, she filed a civil suit against him.
You've got to be kidding me.
It's a money grab, and
the guy never touched her.
We got the case dismissed on the criminal part, but now he still has to deal with the civil suit.
But there's no basis for it. He was not charged.
No, it's actually insane because literally when you watch the video, she bends over and he puts his hand out so she doesn't pop up and, like you said, hit him. And then he walks on. There's no reaction. Night goes on like nothing ever happened. And then after he leaves, she calls the cops. If
she wins this civil case that is still ongoing, that's just going to open Pandora's box for every employee in there, every female employee, to do the same thing.
I don't see how she could possibly win a civil suit. At this point, I think her lawyers would probably just get off that civil suit now that they know that the case was dismissed for lack of evidence.
And they have video,
but
right?
Here's the thing, and this is not the only one of these cases that I have, but men just cannot be anywhere near touching women at this point because you don't know who you're dealing with.
These accusations are happening in banks?
Yes.
Right?
Right.
You've got cases regarding that where the tellers are making claims that guys are fondling them.
Yep. So that one's ongoing. We can't talk about it yet, but I plan on getting that one dismissed too.
Just absolutely, offensive because first of all, it costs the guy that's being accused. Now, if he's doing it, that's one thing. But if he's not doing it, and all of these places have tons of video.
Correct.
As soon as somebody makes the accusation, you're spending money on legal representation. You're going through all of the perception of your community. Your business is probably suffering from it.
Reputation. And if you're a professional and you have any professional licenses, then you probably are answering to your licensing boards.
Isn't there any repercussions for making false claims like that?
Well, the thing is that the state government or the police, they're immune from suits if it's within the normal course of their business. And so probable cause for an arrest is not much evidence. Words alone can be probable cause.
No, I'm not talking about the cops. I'm talking about the person making a false accusation.
Probably cost you too much money to go back.
I just find that to be extremely, extremely dangerous territory to set a precedent like that with the way these young kids think today.
You know why it upsets me? Because there are actually true victims of sexual harassment, true victims of sexual abuse, true victims of domestic violence. And when false accusations like this take up resources in the system, it takes away from time, money, and resources for those true victims.
Which we're going to talk about right now. The next case that we're going to talk about is an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Now, this is a realtor, female, that beat her husband with a bat.
Correct.
Okay, now that sounds like a crazy real estate woman going off on her husband, and everybody feels bad for the husband right now.
Right. He had a broken jaw, a shattered leg. She beat the heck out of him with a baseball bat.
Okay, now let's talk about the story.
Yep.
And then you're not going to feel so bad for this lady. You're going to be cheering for her.
Well, so what happened was her husband came home drunk, and he started to fight with his daughter. And then the woman's son stepped in between. And so then he starts to fight with her son. And so she steps in between, and the fight starts in the front lawn. It goes through the house and ends up in the backyard next to the jacuzzi and the swimming pool.
Yeah, now the son is being abused by a drunk dad, right?
Right, broken collarbone.
He broke his collarbone, okay? So the kid's in the hospital, and a broken collarbone is extremely painful.
Right.
The guy has a long history of family violence that is on the record.
Right.
From previous marriages.
2 prior complainants, 2 prior relationships where he was convicted for family violence.
And the guy transferred from the son because the mom is trying to protect the son. And the guy grabs her, drags her out into the backyard where the spa's at, and commences to drowning her in the spa.
Right. So the jacuzzi or the spa is like maybe not even 10, 12 inches above the ground. And so he's like dunking her head into the jacuzzi, drowning her. So guess what she does?
Tell me.
She reaches for this baseball bat that's right there. And as soon as she comes up for air, she's gasping for air. She grabs the baseball bat, and then she's fighting for her life, and she beats the crap out of this guy.
Go, girl.
Right?
Go. Now you're rooting for her.
The neighbor calls the police. And so when the police arrive, here's the best evidence that we had about what was happening. When the police arrive on body cam, the woman's hair is soaking wet, and her makeup is just coming off of her face from being in the jacuzzi, from being, almost drowned, right? And so it goes to her story that he was drowning me. That's why I had to defend myself.
Okay, so now get this. She's the one that's charged with assault, with a deadly weapon. Now, the neighbors call the cops. The cops come over. They take everybody's story, right? And then they call the DA.
Right.
And then what happens?
So the DA was kind of on the fence about who was the aggressor. The police were trying to say that he was the aggressor, not the woman. But the DA said because he had the injuries that it was probably best to take charges on her. And in the DA's words, this is going to be a mess. And that prosecutor was right. It was a mess. But what we did was we presented our argument, our defense to the grand jury. We put together packets. We turned it into the prosecution. But in the end, the prosecutor decided to dismiss the case without even presenting it to the grand jury.
Dismissed. That's what happens when you have great representation that specialize in criminal law and not having people doing all kinds of law representing you, but also with a highly successful record of winning. And if you listen to all these different podcasts, you're going to hear a consistent theme. Dismissed, no bill, have a nice day.
I enjoy what I do.
All right. Now, I'm interested in talking about this. You have a friend named Makisha Walker.
Yes.
Who was a former prosecutor, but she was a victim of domestic violence the entire time. And she was a prosecutor in the domestic violent area for the DA's office.
Right. So I wanted to bring up her book while we were talking about these allegations and these cases of domestic violence, because she wrote a great book. You can find it on Amazon. It's called But Why Did You Stay? And also
that is a question that I have and everybody else has. When you know somebody that is in that situation, they come back bruised and broken arms and all this, and you keep asking them, why don't you just get out of that situation?
Yeah.
I mean, logic would tell you that, right?
But why did you stay? And that's her website. It's butwhydidyoustay.com. But she's got a great story because Makisha is an independent, strong woman. She was a professional. She practices criminal defense now. She and I practice some cases together, in fact. But her story is amazing because she's not what you typically think of when you think of a victim of domestic violence. And she kept it quiet and hidden, and she tried to handle it herself until she damn near died. And you can see on the cover of her book, she has a split of what her face was like naturally and what her face was like after her abuse. And it's a great story for those who want to know more about domestic violence or who are victims of domestic violence and want to find an escape plan to get out without being killed.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to recall something that you said earlier in this segment, but this is the thing. Okay, number one, the reason that I want to do these interviews with her is to demonstrate that if you have a situation where it's a criminal offense, today, you better get somebody that specializes. This is not just generic law. There are tactics, there are research practices that are used to be able to develop a case that cause these DAs to run. They don't want to go lose a case, okay? So what you're going to find is there's a bunch of, all these lawyers can represent a criminal defense. But what you're going to find is they may prepare a case, but when it's ready to go to trial, they're not trial attorneys and they don't want to go. So you're stuck in a lurch. Your attorney that just spent all this time putting this case together does not want to go to court and present the case. And that's going to leave you in a huge lurch. You've already got your money out there. You're going to have to spend a bunch more and start the whole process over instead of just going to a professional that specializes in criminal defense. And believe me, when you're talking about being put in jail, when you're talking about being outed as a child molester or whatever things that could be public based on whatever charges that you're being presented with, it can have implications for the rest of your life, professionally and personally. So whatever you do, if you're not guilty of what your alleged allegations are or whatever they're saying you're responsible for, make sure that you get a competent, successful criminal defense to protect your future. And you know, it pisses me off that these people, like this restaurant owner, is subject to this bullshit with people gaming the system to try to make money on something that never happened. I mean, it's just really a profound statement of where our society is today, especially with these young kids.
Yeah, well said, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I practiced that twice.
If you go to jail, though, call JL, 713-201-6767. You can find me online, jlcarpenterlaw.com.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to be a voice for those that may not necessarily have a voice of their own. I practice law because I care about helping people get out of situations. And it's rewarding to help bring the truth to light for folks who are wrongfully accused. Sometimes I'll say I represent the misunderstood.